This man, walking with a confident stride, is a notorious local loafer and a top-notch debt collector for a loan shark. When people refuse to pay up, he guzzles gasoline like it's liquor, and forces the debtors to drink with him. Once, a debtor remembered his daughter's 30,000 yuan tuition fee was Saint. Ill in his hands, surprisingly, A-Tai didn't take it all. He threw back a stack of cash and left with a barrage of curses, suggesting he might not be as heartless as people imagined. One day, A-Tai went to the hospital to collect a debt and encountered Hao-ting, the debtor's daughter. He fell in love with her at first sight, but work had to continue. He tossed the debt agreement onto her paralyzed father, and demanded she pay on his behalf. Hao-ting seethed with hatred. Seeing no signs of payment, A-Tai's two lackeys moved to pull the oxygen plug, forcing a desperate Hao-ting to sign a debt transfer agreement with a staggering 49% interest rate. The next day, A-Tai saw a dejected Hao-ting at the hospital entrance, suffocating under the weight of exorbitant medical bills. A-Tai approached her, originally intending to suggest a kidney transplant for her father, but ended up speaking task-style nonsense. Hao-ting mistook his words for a threat to sell her kidneys for debt, and she turned away in a rage. Later, A-Tai asked his boss to let him handle Hao-ting's debt as his year-end bonus. Seeing his best enforcer make a request for the first time, and for a relatively small sum, the boss readily agreed. Now Hao-ting's creditor, A-Tai presented her with an agreement full of small squares. He proposed and for every 1 hour date she went on with him, he would color in one square. Once all were filled, the debt would be wiped clean. Pressed by financial strain, Hao-ting agreed. During their initial dates, Hao-ting only agreed to eat and walk, which made A-Tai feel like he was getting a raw deal. They had a falling out over it, but A-Tai wouldn't give up. He sought her out that night, and they only reached an agreement when she promised to occasionally grab a drink with him. On their first real date, A-Tai ordered a table full of food, but Hao-ting didn't take a single bite. Even so, A-Tai colored in a square after returning home. He then began to care about his appearance, getting a haircut and new clothes, though his sister-in-law mocked his style as tacky. In subsequent dates, Hao-ting still refused to eat and left exactly on time, viewing A-Tai as nothing more than a common thug. The turning point came when Hao-ting went to the hospital, and caught A-Tai tenderly cleaning her father's body without a hint of disgust. Her icy heart began to melt. During their next date, she proactively started eating, and when A-Tai fed her a small bun, she accepted it without hesitation. Their scheduled dates, A-Tai would frequent the bank where she worked just to deposit a single yuan. Hao-ting silently indulged his childish behavior. Their interactions grew to resemble a real romance, with A-Tai using little tricks to win her over, his eyes fixed solely on her. Suddenly, trouble arose. The market A-Tai was responsible for was violently shaken down by other debt collectors, a warning from the boss because A-Tai was so busy dating that he had neglected his collections. A-Tai rushed in to intervene, but his brutal violence was a world away from the gentleman Hao-ting had come to know, and her newfound affection vanished instantly. Disappointed, she returned to the hospital only to find her father missing. She rushed to the rooftop and found A-Tai reading her father's favorite manga to him. Still, Hao-ting wasn't grateful. She felt he was overstepping and she believed a thug could never have sincere feelings. A-Tai chose that ill-timed moment to confess his love, causing their budding relationship to hit rock bottom. They didn't see each other for a long time, until the funeral of Hao-ting's father. A-Tai came to pay his respects, with the solemnity of a family member. Seeing no relatives there to mourn, he called in the market vendors he had helped in the past. He worked tirelessly into the night hosting guests. To give the old man a dignified send-off, stayed by Hao-ting's side through the vigil, and helped with the burial the next day. A-Tai's sincerity finally gave Hao-ting a sense of security, and she silently accepted his feelings. A few days later, she called him to the rooftop to ask if he truly liked her. A-Tai seized the chance to declare his heart, and they officially became a couple. They soon moved in together, enjoying a sweet and happy life. Hao-ting hoped A-Tai would leave the underworld, planning to use her savings and her father's insurance money to open a fried chicken shop and live a quiet life. A-Tai went to his boss to quit. The boss, who was planning a casino venture, made a deal. If A-Tai collected the outstanding debts he had previously been soft on, he could go straight. A-Tai showed no mercy in his final collections, desperate to leave that life behind for Hao-ting. But then, tragedy struck. He suddenly collapsed, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. A CK-up revealed a malignant brain tumor. His life plummeted from hope into utter despair. A-Tai didn't know how much time he had left, or how to tell Hao-ting the truth. Just then, she handed him her entire savings for the shop. Heartbroken and unwilling to let her suffer through the loss of another loved one, A-Tai planned to secure her future before he died. Realizing her savings were only enough for a small suburban shop, he invested his own 30 million yuan in his boss casino, hoping for a big payout. The day for signing the shop lease coincided with the casino's opening. While Hao-ting happily prepared for the signing, A-Tai secretly went to the casino, telling her to wait for him to bring the money, as the boss had promised a 5-fold return. Suddenly, masked thugs stormed the casino, beating people and snatching the cash. The boss escaped under his henchman's protection. A-Tai fought desperately for the money, only to unmask one of the attackers, and realize it was one of the boss' own men. He was promptly knocked unconscious. When he woke up, the casino was empty, the boss had absconded with everything, including A-Tai's life savings. Overwhelmed by regret and unable to face Hao-ting, A-Tai hid in a small diner, drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Meanwhile, after being mocked by the landlord and agent while waiting in vain, Hao-ting found a battered A-Tai. Believing he had broken his promise and returned to his thuggish ways, she was crushed. In his despair, A-Tai said things he would regret for the rest of his life, shattering their relationship. Hao-ting left in tears. In a fit of rage, A-Tai lashed out at someone and nearly killed them, resulting in a 3-year prison sentence, and the total end of their relationship. With 1 year left on his sentence, A-Tai was granted medical parole because his tumor had worsened. He had only 3 months to live, a fact known only to the policeman who looked after him. A-Tai found Hao-ting, and tried to give her a gift to make amends, but she was still deeply scarred and ruthless. His symptoms became more frequent. He discovered his former boss was now running a cold chain factory, and went to demand his 30 million yuan back. Instead of the money, he was beaten and locked in a freezer. Only by showing his medical report, and pleading as a dying man did he manage to get the money back. A-Tai tried to give the money to Hao-ting, but she assumed he had earned it through more criminal acts, and threw it back in his face. Unable to explain or heal her wounds, he could only pick up the money, and beg her to take it, all while struggling to hide a sudden, violent seizure. On the anniversary of her father's death, A-Tai visited to pay respects, and told her he was leaving the city forever. The words tore his heart apart, but they were his final blessing to her. On the day he was set to leave, A-Tai happened upon Hao-ting on a blind date. He followed secretly and, seeing that the man seemed reliable, and capable of making her happy, he prepared to leave with a silent blessing. But his illness struck again, and he collapsed on the roadside, his face covered in blood. When he woke up in the hospital, he saw Hao-ting's name on the payment slip, wondering if she finally knew the truth. He visited their favorite diner one last time before his strength failed. Meanwhile, Hao-ting sought out the policeman, and finally learned the whole truth that A-Tai had desperately hidden. She realized that he hadn't stopped loving her, he loved her to his very core. Recalling the hurtful things she had said, she was filled with agony and regret. She rushed to find A-Tai. Looking at him, she broke down in tears, bowing deeply to express both her respect and her love. All of A-Tai's grievances, despair, and the pain of being misunderstood dissolved into tears in that moment. A-Tai began treatment. Even when a massive needle was driven into his spinal cord, he smiled at Hao-ting to keep her from worrying. As she read his favorite manga to him, A-Tai tried to etch the moment into his memory forever. When she asked if he wanted fried chicken, he realized that every second they spent together was already the most beautiful memory he could have. Hao-ting fought back tears, staring deeply at him, hoping to say goodbye with a smile while praying for a miracle. As his condition reached its end, A-Tai placed a protective amulet he had made in prison into the hand of the sleeping Hao-ting, and gave her his final kiss. The next day, he fell into a deep coma, kept alive only by machines. Hao-ting never left his side, caring for him with infinite tenderness. Sensing her presence, A-Tai used his last ounce of strength to whisper goodbye. At his funeral, the vendors he had once helped came to mourn, sharing their memories of him. Holding the amulet, Hao-ting was consumed by grief when an elderly man with dementia approached her. It was A-Tai's father. He still remembered his son's plea to take care of the woman A-Tai loved most. The old man muttered about A-Tai's devotion and his eternal concern for her. Hao-ting returned to her life alone, but every day after work, a bus would stop precisely for her to escort her safely home. This film tells the story of a man who protected his beloved with his entire life, only to be separated by a terminal illness. Only when a man learns to love does he understand the responsibility. Perhaps A-Tai's departure left Hao-ting's life full of regret, but the moment their love blossomed, it lit up the rest of her days. Life is inevitably full of regrets. All we can do is strive to leave as few as possible.
Catch the wave, skip the wait, every K-drama served on a plate. Thanks for watching.